Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. Coming at you live every week on a Wednesday, going out on YouTube, X, Twitter, and the other
Facebook.
place, Facebook. That's right, Mary. Thank you very much for that. I'm the host, Mark Devlin, and I'm here tonight with my special guest host, Craig Houston, who's here. Thank you. And how are you today, Craig?
Bang average, doing well, and that's came
Average,
off from
okay.
where it started, so it's a good day.
Right, very good. Now, Mary, how are you doing today? Of course.
Well, I'm doing very well. I'm really excited about Valentine's Day this week. I'm really hoping I'm going to get a big surprise.
Oh, what was that? All right, very good. Right, Craig, it's been a little while since you've been on the show. There's going to be quite a lot to talk about what you've been up to later. But what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Done a video, a reaction to some concerned people in Paisley area with a council-owned care home, which has been closed now for about 6 months. And the word in the street there is they are going to turn into an asylum seeker hotel. So I'll talk about my adventures out in Paisley and what the knock-on effects of that have been.
Well, every time you go to Paisley, it's a bit of an adventure. But Mary, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about the shocking numbers of people dying needlessly in our A&Es.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that is a terrible story. And of course, even worse so because we all have to go there at some point or other. Right. And okay, what we're going to be talking about as well.
Well,
did it say here?
Can I
I'm
say?
supposed to be talking about?
Right. Yes, it says you're going to be talking about how Scotland is not working.
That's right, but I don't see that in the piece of paper. Oh, there it is there now. All right, and then what else will we have for us tonight?
And tonight we'll also have the highlight of the week. It's Zoomer of the Week.
Right, so we'll be back with all that and much more in just a few seconds. Right, okay, where are we at? Okay, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat and discussion from an anti-nationalist perspective. Our objective is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that has been strangling Scotland's potential. We all know all about that. I'm here today with special guest hosts, Craig Houston and Mary Devlin. Now, Craig, looks like you've been extremely busy over in YouTube. Mm-hmm. I looked at your channel just there, actually. I think here it is. Here's your channel. Look at all those videos. It's amazing amount of videos there. And lots of them with very big viewers. So that must be keeping you quite busy. Tell us a little bit what's happening on your channel recently.
Well, I've started going out and about, going out on the streets, going to the local community. I've done 2 stories in the last 2 weekends. I went to Paisley, Foxbar for the first one, which we'll talk more about, and then just this weekend I was out in the north of the city at Milton about a problem that happened at a school. I get contacted, and the thing that drove me to do this, I got contacted by a resident in Foxbar who was telling me that, and others were concerned about the old folks home on their doorstep that closed down. And I went out, done a piece to camera from the care home, showed its proximity to a school. It's about 30 yards diagonally across the road from a school. Noticed some work was going on in the place, put the video out, and then somebody decided that the Paisley Express and the Daily Record would do a sort of hit piece calling me far right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it created a bit of a stir. And I've had lots of people now come to me and say, look, there's one here, there's one there. So there's a couple in Glasgow that have been pinpointed that I've been out and had a look at. But they can't get enough information to do a sort of concrete video. So that seems to be my new hobby now. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm getting loads of people come to me now and saying, there's this wee bit of problem with our community. Can you come out and cover it? And it'll be a new feature to the channel rather than me just sitting in this seat, as people probably...
Yeah, because there's, quite a lot of videos about, there's global issues, there's some Scottish issues. We talked a lot about last time about Hamza Yousaf and your investigation that you did into him and the payments going to UNRWA and United Nations Relief Works Association, or whatever it's called, all that type of stuff. Has there been any has there been any progress with your investigation into Humza?
Well, I think not really so much, because he's not the First Minister anymore. He's not as topical, but he keeps throwing up things himself that gives me material. And the last one was he'd done a podcast on Al Jazeera.
Right.
He was talking about how terrible it is in the West to be a Muslim and how everybody's Islamophobic and all this sort of nonsense. And at the end of the clip, he made what I termed as a threat, by telling the West that there will be consequences for this.
Right.
And I thought, wow. So, that was the sort of latest. That was very well. That was about 190,000 views, that video, where I've just highlighted, here's a guy, here's a comment, make your mind up yourself if he's actually making a threat to the West or not. But it's certainly
the world would be, or the West would be a lot less Islamophobic if we didn't get threats from people like Humza Yousaf.
It's very true. It seems to be the threats that make people scared of anybody. So yeah,
or for example, doing the feeling that it's like trampling on conventions in the name of religion. For example, I was reading. Well, we all saw that doing the Islamic prayer first thing when you go into Ute House. Now, if Kate Forbes had done something like that, I think people would have looked at that with very dimly. Or a Christian had done that kind of thing, people would be up in arms. But it seems it's a weird thing that. Now, of course, many people who practice Islam aren't, of course, extremists and so on, but it does seem to attract more than its fair share. And those people seem to really want to get into politics and get power. It seems to be part of it.
Yeah, that's reminded me at the weekend as well. I was sent in a short video by a viewer of the channel, which I'd done a larger video on, and it was a short clip from Buchanan Street in Glasgow. Now, I've not been in the city centre for a long time, in the shopping area, and it was a big green tent with something about Islam, free info about Islam, and an Arabic song, which was a woman singing it. I thought it was maybe a call to prayer, but I've been corrected to say no, it wouldn't be a female singing a call to prayer, but it's obviously a religious song in the middle of a high street. And you think, I know people that have read the Bible aloud and said prayers loud and been arrested in the United Kingdom, but if you do this with another religion, it seems to be perfectly acceptable. And a lot of this stuff we hear, it's normally down south. Scotland sometimes get a bit blasé and say, well, it's an English problem. Well, it's not. These things, a knife crime, the two stories I done last week where I went out to Milton, were two different schools in Glasgow, with both of them had knife crime, one in Milton and one in Grangemouth, in the space of 1 week.
Right.
Primary schools.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we always think, we hear of the 15-year-old that got killed in Sheffield, so we think that's an English thing. But we had two in a week, one in Milton and one in Grangemouth. So it's about highlighting these problems and showing it.
Shocking.
I think that's quite good to go when you go and talk with the local people. You really get a different idea of the way things are. It's quite easy to sit, in your house and say, all right, the world's terrible out there. But as you go out and see that it is actually terrible, is another thing entirely. Right. Okay.
Sorry, before we move on, I don't know if there's an answer to this, but people are asking about the Silver Fox. Do you have any information for them, Craig?
Yeah, I do. I got a phone call earlier on Saturday morning to tell me the old sod had just been released from the police station. About 9:30 on Friday night, the chap at the door, there was 4 police officers in 2 vehicles, invited him under arrest and took him to the station. Because he's on medication, they can't just put him straight in an interview situation. They need to make sure he's able to do it first. So they had to do some medical checks, and then he started his interview about 1 o'clock in the morning. He was interviewed for about 2 to 3 hours, then put in a cell, and was told he may be held over the weekend and taken to court on Monday to plead. And the police were wanting to just put the evidence to their superiors, and they came back down about 5 or 6 a.m. and released him under police bail. There were some videos, about 4 in total, that he was questioned about, and he just has to wait to see what's happening now. And I spoke to him again on Sunday, and he's still pretty shaken up. I know he's been doing videos now, but he's telling me that he's really going to need to be careful, even the topics, not even so much what he says, but even touching hot topics that until this thing is resolved one way or another. Which I mean, he's been not reprimanded already, but he's now actually watching what he does and does.
Self-censorship.
Yeah, that's it, and that seems like the biggest problem here. So, touch wood, I said that in a few days we'll maybe get him on and I'll do a wee mini podcast with him, just record that and put it out about how he is. But he's back in the world of YouTube, and hopefully he's back to his normal cheeky, inquisitive self as soon as possible.
Hi, very good. All right, we'll be talking a little bit more. You'll be talking a bit more about your trip down to Paisley later in the show. As usual, we have a huge thanks to our friends at United Against Separation Facebook page, where many of you are watching from tonight. Of course, this should have been earlier, but remember, sharing is caring. Number one thing you can do for a show is to like it on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, please do drop us a like. That improves us in the algorithm. We're all prisoners of the algorithm anyway.
And as usual, I will be managing the relentless flow of comments. And tonight they do seem pretty relentless. So please keep them coming and keep them short and snappy. I'll try to get as many up on screen as I can.
Right. Okay. We'll be back in a second. We're going to talk about Scotland not working. Okay. Right. Okay. Here we go. Scotland's not working itself. A slogan, but it seems to be a reality between October 2023 and September 2024. There were 810,400 economically inactive people in Scotland, and those are of working age, which is 16 to 64 in this thing. So those are 800,000 people who are out of work and who are not looking to be employed. The biggest reason given for 271,000, which is almost a third of those people, was long-term sick or disabled. And that was the highest proportion, citing this excuse since 2004/2005. Actually, sorry, I had the thing on here. I had a wee thing for that. That was my chart, but anyway, maybe it's not there. We'll come back to that in a second. Anyway, there was a chart that came along with it, and I noticed that 9% were in this other category that said discouraged. I was like, well, is it really a matter of discouragement? Is that the thing? Surely it's like you go to the job centre and they say, well, can will you go for this job? And you go, no, I'm discouraged. You're like, how's that going to work? You're like, no.
They say, well, here's some money if you're feeling a bit discouraged.
It's like, get on your bike, as they used to say. Now, not saying that everyone can get on their bike, especially not people who are truly sick or disabled, of course. That's not the thing here. But
well, I think one of the things that is the thing, Mark, is that the percentage in Scotland is much higher than the percentage in England.
Yes, indeed.
And what we're talking about is people of working age.
Yes. Noticed anything like this in your travels through to Paisley and other parts of the
exotic locales?
Scotland.
I'm just really disheartened a bit when you hear about 20% of the kids within certain areas are never going to work and things like that. And I think we really need to get a hold of this as a community and try and infuse and encourage and find reasons for our young to be enthusiastic about not being one of the 20% or one of the 25%, and create opportunities for them. Find out what skill shortages we've got, because we keep hearing that's why we need to bring in immigrants. So let's look at what skill shortages do we have. And I kind of remember a lot of girls my age when they were leaving school going on to be nurses, and I don't see that now. I've worked with children for 18 years as a volunteer, running football teams and stuff. And they just, what is it you want to do when you grow up? There's some of them are great. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some great kids out there, but it's not the majority, and we need to get them infused to go and work and look to try and build houses, and own houses, and give ourselves a better future. We need to give them hope.
Yeah, I think that is definitely very true. I think that's the thing. I think just the hope is the thing. Sometimes I think people are like, they just look and they go, well, what's the opportunity here? And the government doesn't help them by putting them in certain situations. For example, last December, Scottish Fiscal Commission warned about the cost of the SNP's new disability benefit, which is apparently set to spiral by hundreds of millions of pounds thanks to light touch checks on claimants. Apparently, only 2% of those on payments had been stopped following a review, compared to 16% of similar personal independence payments being stopped in England. This means basically what they do is they just say, they tick a box and just say in Scotland, say, tick a box to confirm that their circumstances haven't changed. There's no real investigation or further information collecting. So this, but
I'm
you
sorry,
might think,
do they not check with doctors or anything? I mean,
well, I think in an extended process they do have that, but they don't in this case. And this has meant that it's cost in Scotland, it's increased the cost to £199 million in 2025-26 and 366 million in 28 to 29. 366 million, but you can almost buy a ferry for that. So I mean, I think this is the thing that we've seen in Scotland. We have this idea that the SNP or Nationalists anyway will not cut the big programs, and almost in it, you know, it's like there's so much money spent in welfare, and some of course, I'm not saying it by any means that people don't need that or don't deserve that if they're sick or whatever, nothing like that. But there are people who, you know, taking the system for granted. Maybe let's put it that way.
Taking it for a ride.
Well, there are some people who are doing that, but what's the worst is that the government is letting them do that. That's the problem, and it's these programs are so big that even a 1% change in it makes a huge difference in the amount of money. So we often talk about, say, let's cut the budget for the embassies and all that. You go, oh, it's 8 million cut. You're like, oh, that's great. But you know, they're talking hundreds of millions here instead. So, Craig, if you were heading the Scottish government, which you may well be one day, who knows? What would you cut? I mean,
I think as a society, we've got to be able to differentiate between those who can and those who won't, and those who can't work. Sorry, there's people I know that are disabled that would love to work, and even if we could find a job that was suitable that fitted in with their disability, they would be more than willing to work. But we have got a society, unfortunately, where people just won't work. And I think that's been ingrained after generations of people where we're on to maybe the third and fourth generation of family who have never worked, because the system we have currently kind of penalises you if you're going to work. And I think somebody worked it out, you need to earn like £30,000 a year for some people before it would be worth their while actually getting a job. And for somebody with no skills and no experience at 30 years of age, they suddenly say, I'm going to get a job and expect £30,000 a year, isn't going to work. So we kind of need to find a good way of this dividing between those who can't work and those who won't work. And these are the ones over this side that we kind of need to encourage. And if you need to encourage them by threatening to cut their income through benefits, then fine. But the system's also got to protect those who genuinely can't, because they deserve to be looked after.
I think there is this, to some extent, there is a kind of idea that you're entitled to these benefits. And now I think there's really also the idea that these benefits are freebies, right? But they come from people's taxes. And is it really fair that anyone should pay extra taxes to fund someone else's lifestyle? Now, of course, that's an ongoing discussion. Where is the level to draw the line? Now, we're seeing over in America that Elon Musk and Trump together are doing this, the Department of Government Efficiency. And what they are doing is they're going through government programs pretty much line by line and saying, nope. Now, so far they've started on maybe the low-hanging fruit. And then eventually they're going to get to these welfare programs there. Now, do you think, Craig, that we should have someone like that in Scotland who can go through and do that type of thing?
When I threw my hat in the ring and told people publicly I was going to stand for Holyrood, some people, when I was on these X spaces, they're quite good. I like them. People quite rightly were saying, well, what will you do? And I was like, well, I'm not going to be the First Minister. So what impact can you have? And I'd said 6-7 months ago that we need to be able to go in, lift the bonnet and see exactly what we're spending as a country. And we need to make sure everything is efficient. Because with a country, you've only got, the only income you've got is taxing people, and your expenditures are all normally public services. So if we need more money for roads, or we need more money for transport or NHS or whatever it is, the only way we can do that is actually tax people more. So I was saying, well, stop that a minute. And I've been into businesses. Some of the biggest influences I've had in businesses is saving money, not bringing more in, which is weird because I'm traditionally a salesperson.
Okay.
But looking at the costs and saying, well, what do we need? Can we save money on? So I've been saying this for a long time. So when he came up with the Doge idea, I was like, I don't think Donald Trump had been listening into my X Spaces, right? I don't think he stole my idea. But it's the same hymn sheet. I've been singing the same thing. I've been singing that since the summer and just after the general election. And we need to do it. You know, we've got so much stuff that we could be spending money on, but rather than just taxes extra, let's have a look at things like bank nursing. The bank nursing system is a great system, but it's been managed wrongly. We now have wards that they use the bank nursing system as a recruitment thing, but the bank nursing system shouldn't be. It should be there in emergencies when someone's off and sickness and holidays and you just need somebody in for a couple or 3 shifts. Now, I spoke to someone high up in the health service and asked them the question, how much do you think you could save on that? And the answer I got back was £1 billion. Right. Now, I'm not in the health service, so that's just one thing. The buses, we give £300,000 for, £300 million per year for free bus passes for those under 21. Do we need to do that? Because they ain't going to college, and if they were going to college and libraries and things like that, it would be money well spent, but they're not. They're using it to transport net cultures in a lot of instances from one area to another. So we're not utilising that system. Could we say, okay, doing a voucher type system, if you're going to go to university or college or a library or work even, we'll subsidise your travel. Could we save hundreds of millions of pounds there? And the list is endless. That's just two off the top of my head.
Well, I think there's just this idea in general that people are there, working people and motorists and, people who are producing are there to be taxed. And there's no alternative. Just it's always like, well, we will, nothing can be cut. These programs are sacred in many ways, and it's like the NHS, for example. It's like if someone goes up and says, well, we're going to cut the NHS, even if people know that that's a good thing for cutting waste, still there'll be a huge amount of people who say, just almost like a religion, will say, we can't cut the NHS. Right, even though people know that that's the thing. So this is what happens, I think, in the States, where people know that everything has to be cut, but no one's going to do it. And it takes someone like Trump or Musk to come along and say, "Look, we all know we have to do this. So actually, let's do it."
One of the craziest things is Labour came out with a thing today where they said that they're going to support 3 or 4 things that the SNP give away free, like the bus travel and the prescriptions and stuff. And like I said, prescriptions. My whole life, free prescriptions have been a thing, because your old prescription in the back of it, if you were benefits or retired or a long-term illness, you ticked a box and your prescription was free. If you didn't hit that criteria, then you paid whatever it was at the time, and it's probably, I think, England now paying £9 for a prescription. So I could quite easily, I've got medication now. I get diagnosed as being diabetic the 1st of January. I've got medication there, but I would quite happily pay £9 for my prescription and able to pay it. And so would loads and loads of people, but we just decide, no, we're giving this away free, and it's a vanity project, and it's a vote winner for but it costs everybody else money, and it's ridiculous. Paracetamol I could buy for 50p, or cost the NHS £20 probably. So the whole thing needs looked.
Well, they're saying it was £8. I think
£8.57.
Oh, Mary knows. Right, Mary, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I think what's happened in America, and I think this is what you would need in Scotland as well, is that Trump has brought in Elon Musk, who's a business person. And I think the difference in Scotland is that the people in government, SNP, most of them have never worked in a business.
Yes.
Yeah. Never mind knowing how to run a business. So if you're going to be looking at efficiency and you're going to be looking at cutting costs, you need to bring in people who've run businesses.
Now, I was done a video about the new health minister who doesn't know what a woman is, thinks she can be a llama.
Oh, yes.
And that one. And I was looking at Wikipedia, and you could copy and paste this Wikipedia, because she went to school, went to college, went to university, got a degree in politics, then started working for a charity. Then she started doing stuff as a staffer for the Labour Party, who got her a cushy wee seat somewhere as a councillor to give her a wage, and then eventually goes to be an MP. She's never worked in the public sector, private sector in her whole life. And there's a whole sea of these people in Holyrood and Westminster.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe one person who, like, I think it's Ivan McKee, maybe, who actually did the same course as us at university, and he's like the one person who I would say has got a reasonable degree for business, and the rest of them they don't have any idea whatsoever. So I think you've got these people who really are politically driven. They don't have any competence in financial matters. They're not prepared to. They're just not prepared to cut the things that need to be cut, and it's just going to continue. I think.
Well, there's cuts, and then there's just making things more efficient.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Which I suppose involves cuts as well, but there's an awful lot of efficiency.
Well, can I give you a crack? Here's one for you for free, right? We do the baby boxes, 50,000 a year.
Sure.
So we buy the box, we buy the mattress, we buy all the stuff, right? And we give them away to anybody, whether they can afford things or not. Now, I've got 2 kids, both in their 20s now. And when I left the maternity, we had a wee bag of stuff. So we always got free stuff, right?
Right.
So see, if I was a Minister of Health, I would go down to Johnson & Johnson and the person that does the wipes, right, and say,
I totally agree. Same thing.
Give me stuff. Give me. I'll put this in 50,000 people. Right?
I know.
And then what you do is see the horrible bit is that box. We're expecting people who can't afford a crib to put their kids in a cardboard box. So see the money you could save by not paying for the bloody stuff, right? We could then put that into a kitty where people can apply and get a free crib and get one for Mothercare for a deal for a couple £100, and we give away.
They're not even as much as
the
that.
people who need it.
You can get a crib for less than £100.
Right, so £100, we're buying them in bulk. We get them for 50, and we give them to people who really can't afford to do it, and have got the indecency of putting their babies in a bloody box. There's another couple of other hundreds of millions of pounds that we can save, and they don't do these things.
Well, no, I mean, there's lots of places where money can certainly be saved. That's the thing, but you need to have the will to be able to do that, right?
Sorry, can I just say that, seeing as we're talking about babies and kids and so on, I think one of the factors of young people in Scotland not wanting to work, I think a lot of young girls have figured out that if they leave school and they have babies, that in Scotland you get paid a lot of money. When you've got kids, you get paid a lot of money right up until they're 16.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically decide to become, full-time mothers rather than going out and get a job. I'm not saying, I know there's, the population is declining and so on, and we do need people to be having children. But I think that might be a big factor in why young girls, it would be interesting to see the number of young males compared to the number of young females who are not even looking for work.
Right. Well, back to jobless numbers. Businesses, this is all going on. Craig mentioned it a little bit earlier on, while Scottish businesses are complaining about a skills shortage, with those in hospitality, engineering, farming, and the NHS all suffering recruitment issues. So what does the Scottish government do? They create programs and incentives to get people back to work? Of course not. What their idea is for Scotland to take more immigrants. Are they really interested in more immigrants coming? No. They're really interested in Westminster saying, no, you can't do that because you're a devolved administration, and in making a grievance out of it. I don't think they really care about immigrants or not, really. Of course, other than if they did get immigrants to come in, they would vote for the SNP, which seems to be the thing. I mean, you tend to vote for the people who let you in the country. Now, this immigration thing here, it's an issue because we're seeing it all over the UK, uncontrolled, let's put it that way, uncontrolled immigration. And people are starting to wake up and see what's going on about that. Now, we talked earlier about people from Islamic countries and so on. But the question here is, if people are going to come in and do jobs, immigrants are going to come in and do jobs for cheap, then what is the incentive for Scottish people or anyone across the UK to go out and get a job? Because the other do just go, well, these people will do it. Don't you think, Craig?
Yeah, it's a big conundrum that we need to solve, because, and I don't get it. I don't understand how we can have a housing shortage and we have a skills shortage, and the SNP's answer to that is bring in more people, please, because where are you going to put them? It was them that came out 6 months ago and told us we had a national housing crisis. So that's their only go-to. Whereas if you go to the kids, and as I say, I've got a lot of experience working with young adults, go and infuse them. Get into the schools when they're about 13 and 14. Take a big bag of jobs with you that you say, this is the skill shortages we genuinely have, and this is the industries that we're trying to bring in as a nation, and infuse these kids to get into these type of industries, and educate them accordingly. And if it means we need to build colleges that train our bricklayers, or we need to build new universities that concentrate in AI, then that's what we need to do. And we need to get into them when they're sort of 13 and 14, when they're impressionable, when they can make decisions that are going to influence the rest of their life. And, it might take us a decade to get payoff from that, which is probably why nobody's done it, because they only look
that's
4
the
and 5
thing,
years at a time.
right? So I was while we were doing this, I was researching the show, I saw this article here. It's all about this. This is an example here. This is just straightforward. Why are there not enough train drivers in Scotland? Right? And basically, it's this woman here. She's been here. I don't know if she was born here or not. It doesn't matter. This is not an immigration thing. But she basically has been hired as a trainee driver. Right? She'll get £50,000 a year just months after qualifying. Right? Okay. So why aren't schools and the government saying, look, you can really get into this type of thing, or you can become there's so much opportunity out there. Instead, they're trying to do it round the wrong way. I think they need to lower the cost. What I've got here, the cost of working. It's just too expensive to work for most people.
Yeah, look, see if you took a couple of guys that are gaffers in ScotRail or whatever, and you took them into every high school in Glasgow, even just for an example, and you spoke to the 13, 14, 15-year-olds about it and about all the benefits and the money they can make from doing it, I would guarantee you at least one of those kids per school would want to be a train driver.
Of course.
It's just that, it's a good example. Yeah. And
why wouldn't
if we've got a shortage of them, then why not infuse people about doing it and, put them in jobs, even give them a couple of weeks in their fourth year to go and be train drivers, maybe even sign them up on a sponsorship thing where you might put them to college or something on the basis that they're going to get a job with the rails at the end of it. And suddenly you don't have a shortage of train drivers.
No. But the other side of it is, and I've been talking to some business owners over the past few weeks. Now, I like the idea, if my other business grows, you'll get an office and all that. I keep saying to me, we'll get an office, we'll get some staff. Mary's like, no, it's terrible. It's really terrible.
I don't want staff.
No, right? And it's not because you don't want the people. People are fine. It's because of all the rules that are red tape that are around the situation. Now, a person we know was talking about this lady who was working for them, and that person basically didn't do any work and then claimed that they had mental health issues, and it meant that they had to go through this whole 6-month process of filling in forms and hand-holding this person for 6 months, and then at the end of it, then this process just basically repeated again, and the person couldn't be fired during this time. And so, that's just one rule. Think about all the other ridiculous rules and regulations that government impose, going all the way from the low emission zone right through to the actual employment laws and so on. And it seems really like it's hard for people to get a job, and it's hard for employers to employ people, and the government isn't helping in any way. And this, Mary, you got some things to say about this, I think, maybe.
Well, we lived in Japan. We had a big company in Japan, about 40 people in the company, and we had a company in the USA. In both those countries, well, in Japan, you had to give people, you could get rid of anyone anytime you wanted. You just give them 30 days notice. In Florida, you could just tell a person, that's it, I'm sorry, you're finished. I think in free markets, when you're running companies, you have to be able to get rid of staff if they're not working out for whatever reason. If they're not doing the job properly or whatever, you have to. Otherwise, your company is going to go down.
Yeah, one of the thing is in other countries they don't do it. So in the States, people just go, right, okay, I get fired today. Oh, I'm going to another place. Because it's just hire and fire. That's like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of movement of people,
market, especially in hospitality. So there is some fluid market in hospitality here, but it's just people aren't really seeing. I think there's just it seems like a whole structure of it doesn't work, and we'll just put some rules in to try and make it work, and then it just makes everything worse and end up with just a big mush. Anyway, now Craig, you can final word on this segment. You can final word if you want to say anything to wrap it up.
I think we just need to reinvent this whole thing. We need to start again. The society, I believe, is almost broken. I'll never give up faith in the good people of the United Kingdom, but it's this willingness to work, get up off your arse, go and do something that we kind of need to try and get back. And as I say, I think the prime way of doing that is getting into the young kids, getting into their heads, and just infuse them.
Right. Okay, very good. So in the end, something has to change. Scotland's not working under the SNP, but I think it's a UK-wide thing almost as well. We'll take a short break, and we're going to come back, and Craig's going to talk about his adventures in Paisley in a little bit more detail. Okay, see you in a second. Right, but before that, we are doing quite well with what's it called? Fundraiser for the Majority Truth Bot. We're up at £500 for this. Basically, it's all about how sick you are of nationalists repeating the same guff over and over again. I've got a few things in here. Well, independence is stronger than ever. The polls are over 50%. Claim of right. Solar, oil, wind, and electricity, and all this. It's so tedious. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about how tedious it is later in the show. But the idea is that we should be able to just, use technology to our advantage. Build a bot that just says, no, you're talking rubbish, and move on. So we're trying to raise about £1,000. For that, we've raised 500 so far. Thank you very much for everyone who has donated. If you would like to donate, then please go to our website, and I'll put a link up once this is on YouTube. Oh, there it is there. You can go to donorbox.org, the Majority Truth Bot. I think you can also go from our website. You can also, of course, do a super sticker or super thanks, or whatever they're called, on YouTube. So, right, okay, that done. And Craig, tells all about your adventures.
Aye, so just start from the start. I got contacted by a man in Foxbar that looked out his window and he could see an old care home, which was shut down at the end of last year. He is concerned with a lot of his neighbours and his community that this is going to get turned into an asylum home. So jumped in a car a couple of Sundays ago, drove out to Foxbar. Yeah, it's obviously it's all boarded up. It's like strange that you'll have one bedroom where it's not boarded up, which is a bit odd. And it's just surrounded. If you stand at the door and you spin around 360 degrees, about 320 of those degrees you'll be looking at residential properties. There's high flats opposite. There's semi-detached, detached house here, and the other side there's rows of houses. And then the last sort of 40% of your view would be this primary school. Okay. We're obviously concerned now. Is it going to be an asylum home? I don't know, but we'll ask the question. And what Renfrewshire Council are saying is that when they decided to close it at the middle to end of last year, they would market it as a care home. And if they were going to do that, you'd imagine the best time to sell it as a care home is when it had old people in it, because you can kind of sell it as a going concern. But no, they've shut it. They've put them all to the other two homes in Paisley. And that would have been Sunday that went out. Around about Tuesday, I got sent an article in the Daily Record, basically calling me far right, all the rest of it, suggesting the STP party that I'm a member of are far right because they showed one paragraph of our policy, which basically says we don't want immigrants. So that obviously means I'm Hitler. And they got a guy from Paisley for Palestine and Black Lives Matters to tell everybody, not to say anything, the question was wrong, not to say this isn't going to be a asylum home. He came on to tell them that I sounded like a far-right guy, basically, and Paisley welcomes refugees. So in the story, there was nothing there up until the last paragraph suggesting that the concerns are correct. Nobody's trying to address the concerns. And there was one line from the local council saying it is not in our plans, currently in our plans.
Oh yeah, I think this might be the article here. Is this the one?
That's the one.
All right, okay, that's the place there. So you can see all boarded up.
And out of all the nonsense they wrote about Craig, if you go about 2 or 3 paragraphs down, they make this big play and saying Craig's not even from Renfrewshire.
Are you not?
Well, that kind of got me. I live in Glasgow.
Don't know why, it's all screwed up. So
I was born in Linwood, which is in the middle of Richmond. Okay, yeah, I lived there till I was 12, and I moved to Bridge of Weir, and I stayed there. I was married in my early 20s. And then I spent about 7 or 8 years living in Houston, which is in the middle of Renfrewshire.
Well, I'd say that's definitely yes.
30 odd years out of my 51 in this planet in Renfrewshire, but I'm not from Renfrewshire apparently. So there we go.
Right. Now this bill. I mean, this is the thing. We've had a lot of this, by the national, every so often, shake rattle their teeth or shake their gums or whatever it is about this, about us. We're just like, what are you talking about? Nonsense. But it keeps them happy sometimes to get, this type of, activity. Now, is it how are you going to follow up in this story?
Well, I'm prepared to put a bet on, a charity bet, if anybody wants to take me up on it, that within the next 12 to 18 months, the council will suddenly not have been able to find anybody and will now need to open the scope of future uses and they'll sell it to somebody. That's kind of where I'm going with it. But I've now, as I say, I've had people contact me with concerns in different areas, and there's a couple in Glasgow that, we're chasing them up. There's some good people out there chasing them up as well, going and speaking to owners. So there's nothing concrete on them. It's all maybes at this point. So
someone's saying here, I can't find it now, but they were saying that there's maybe one opening in Lanark.
There's a hotel. There's certainly a hotel in Lanark, which I can't understand. There can't be much more than one hotel in Lanark, and apparently it's a hostel for asylum seekers. So,
really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the thing. You think a care home would be good business, though? You wouldn't think it would be, but perhaps maybe asylum seekers
better business.
is a better business.
Yeah, well, I don't think you'll have much running costs. You feed them similar. You won't need as many staff to look after them, and
you need more security, probably.
No, possibly. But, listen. The immigrants that are here, we need to make a decision what we're doing with them. But while they're here, we need to put them somewhere. But I'm sure you could find a big factory in Queensley or something that's empty. Put loads of bunk beds in it, a kitchen, a toilet, a couple of portaloos, and that would keep the ECHR happy. But to put them constantly in places where we know, and I'm not a bigot or racist or far right with saying this, it's just proven fact that when this does happen and you put them in communities that are, heavy residential, crime goes up and it's not as nice a place to live. Yes. So why would we keep doing that? If we've got a problem, then let's invent a better solution. And, I'm being funny. If you get one of these big warehouses in Queensley, even divvy it up with some plyboard and stick some bunk beds in it. I'm sure
they were able to make that hospital, remember, at the SEC pretty fast.
Yeah,
anyway, point. But I think there is perhaps, I haven't gone into this in too much detail, but there is, an immigration industrial complex, as it were, where people are making good money out of this course. These people who are running the hotels, of course, making good money.
Yeah, can I give you my concern is I don't think anybody would say we've not got enough immigrants, right? Or illegal immigrants and fake asylum seekers. That's the real problem here. Having immigrants isn't a big problem because if Elon Musk wanted to move to Scotland or Donald Trump, you would have them open arms. So having immigrants, you two have been immigrants in other countries and done quite well out it. So you don't want to stop that. You don't want to say we can't have any because then Elon Musk can't come. But the problems are illegal immigration and the fake asylum seekers. But in the last 27 years, every single Westminster government that's went into power has went in power on a manifesto saying they want to reduce immigration. And none of them's done it. It's generally it's went up. But the problem I see and where I think it is, we need to consider what's happening in America now with this US aid, where we've now seen and proven that people in power are corrupt, right? So unless you can actually convince yourself somehow that people in Westminster and people in Hollywood are somehow immune from this disease of corruption, and then you consider that we've created a whole industry behind immigration with the hotels, with the lawyers. That's a great one. The carers, the counsellors, the translators. It's a multi-billion-pound industry we've created now, and everybody that can get money and put an invoice in has got the ability to put a brown envelope in somebody's hand. So I think that's a bigger problem here. But we can stop immigration very, very simply. We can just make this place not as nice to be as an illegal or fake asylum seeker in France. Then they'll stop coming.
Well, we lived in Japan, right? And Japan take like 30 asylum seekers in a year. 30. You know, and Japan, it's easy to get Japan, in a plane or whatever. It's not that difficult to get there. They just don't take them to say no, we're not doing it, and that's it, because it really does come down to political will, and I think there is a lot of this, perhaps maybe financial corruption, but I think the system. I think people are beginning to feel the system is corrupt and that no one is able to deal with the system. You know, maybe you can attack one part of the system, right, of this immigrant system, and then the other part comes back and bites you. You know, with lawyers, for example, this is because of these ridiculous things. You read them every day in the paper. You know, these people can't be deported for whatever reason. You're like, no, I don't think so. It's nonsense anyway. But I think this is what you're doing, is looking at what's happening on the ground, and you're looking at this and say, how does this affect these people in this area? Now, there's been quite a lot of stories of these immigrant men, hanging outside schools and all this type of stuff as well. So I think local residents have a right to be concerned that if these things happen in the area.
Listen, you guys moved from an area where the age of consent is 16 and you go to another country. And if you were a teenager or a young man in your early 20s, you'd probably consider, asking the question before you went to Florida, because we've got different rules for drinking ages.
Sure.
You might consider it. But when you come from places in the world where the society is acceptable to marry someone at 9, and you're here and, you've just been lifted and laid here and, this is all new to you, it might not cross your mind.
Well, that's been a defence in some court cases. They didn't know that you couldn't have sex with a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And why is it our society's obligation to teach them these things anyway?
Well, they should have a big poster up on the wall.
See this thing here. See if you've got one of these or are eligible for one of these. That should be your country's first priority, regardless if that's an American or a Canadian. I'm British. I've got one of these. That should be the first priority for our government. That is kind of front and centre. But unfortunately, that's not where we're at right now.
No, it's terrible. It really is bad. But anyway, looking at the example of the United States and hoping that can come here. Of course, the Scottish Government wants to put in a Scotland-only visa. Well, as I mentioned earlier, that's just really a grievance technique. Scotland, they like to say, we're more welcoming than the rest of the UK. And in fact, in social studies and polling, basically Scots don't like immigrants just as much as anyone else, especially, illegal immigrants or fake asylum seekers. They don't like that just as much as anywhere else. And why wouldn't they? In fact, even though there's actually less immigrants here, they don't like them more. So that's that. Okay. Well, long may you have success with your endeavours to uncover whatever's going on in these local areas. I think there's quite a lot of mileage in there. Okay. I'm supposed to do a T-shirt message. If you like a T-shirt, go to the shop. I've got a wee thing here. T-shirts. Not just T-shirts. Look at this. This fantastic. They may take our lives, but they will never take our camper vans. There's one. Right. So T-shirt. You can get one of those. Impress your friends and annoy your enemies with that type of thing at the Majority Shop. You can just go to our website now. Thank you for being with us, and we have a good number of people in. Thank you also for Craig for promoting our channel on his, which is really great. And I did notice earlier a mention from Stephen Bailey, who was talking about we should abolish Holyrood to save even more money. And we do have an article coming out about just that very topic again in a few days. It's been taking quite a while to put this together, but a series on constitutional arrangements in Scotland and what we can do to do better. Of course, please remember to like and subscribe. Now, coming up, Mary is going to talk about people dying needlessly in A&E, which is I think it's disgusting anyway. But anyway, Mary will talk about it in a second. Right.
Mark, if you could take over the comments while I'm doing this.
My mouse isn't working very well.
No, mine isn't great either. Maybe we can change our batteries. Okay, so this week there was a shocking headline saying an estimated 56 people had died in 1 week waiting too long to be seen in the A&E in Scotland. So if that was a month, that would be about 225 people would die in a month who could potentially have been treated and recovered, but now they're dead. And the A&E waiting times continue to be a national disgrace. Only just 60% of people were seen within the 4 hours, which is what's supposed to be done, during the week ending February 6th, second, which means, of course, that 40% weren't. There over 4,000 patients waiting more than 8 hours to see anybody in the A&E, and 2,000 people waiting over 12 hours. So more than half of Scots who turned up at the A&E in the Forth Valley and NHS Lanarkshire were not seen within the 4-hour target. So we are missing our targets by a mile. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine has calculated that for every 72 patients who experience a wait of 8 to 12 hours in the A&E, that would lead to one additional death. So somebody that should have been seen in the A&E, they would have been okay. They're going to die because they're just not being seen. I mean, isn't that terrible in a modern country like today, that people are dying just because nobody's even dealing with them in the A&E? Of course, the blame for this worsening chaos lies squarely with Health Secretary Neil Gray, who has been too busy defending his penchant for taxpayer-funded limo rides to support his favourite football team, rather than preventing Scotland's NHS from descending into chaos. Last week, John Swinney had pretty much sidelined Gray as he attempted to get to grips with the failing health service himself, but we know that's going to go absolutely nowhere. Swinney outlined a series of rehashed promises and admitted that his renewed focus on the NHS was due to it becoming an electoral problem. So basically, because he thinks it might lose votes, that he's actually going to put some attention on it. Meanwhile, the crisis in our A&E departments is showing no signs of letting up. Rather than continuing to defend his discredited and disgraced health secretary, John Swinney should cut the bureaucracy, cut bed blocking, and make sure resources actually get to the front line to urgently reduce these waiting times. Now, I've been in the A&E recently a few times, and you see some really sorry sights in there, and people who just sit and look as if they've been there for like hours and hours and hours. It's a real shame.
The thing I don't really understand is why you have to go to the A&E in many cases. It used to be you would just go to the doctor would see you, and that's it. What's the problem? Why can't doctors see you anymore?
Because there aren't enough doctors.
But even so, let's say in America you have a nurse practitioner, or
advanced practitioners.
In between the nurses and the doctors, and they can do most stuff. You go in with your finger hanging off with a knife. They can stitch you up even with that type of thing, whatever, right? So I mean, what? It just seems like there's no. Is there anyone who's actually competent, who is actually looking at this and going, yeah, we could actually fix this somehow?
Well, that is the problem, isn't it? I mean, we've got a huge problem. It's getting worse all the time. And there's nobody that you can say, well, I wish so-and-so would come and, would be head of the Scottish National Health Service or something. There just doesn't seem to be anybody at the helm at all who has any idea what to do to address these kind of problems.
I mean, it goes back to the thing earlier as well. It's like you've got these people who have been basically career politicians. What Craig said earlier on, they come out of college and they go straight into some kind of either a charity which is funded by the Scottish government, or they go into working for the SNP, and then they become an MSP and then a minister. They've done no real world experience and never run a budget. They've never had to fire or hire any. Well, maybe they have to hire somebody because they've got an expense account, but they've never had to really fire anyone or do the hard work of cutting or making anything efficient. Right? It's just.
Now, I agree that the politicians are absolutely useless when it comes to running the National Health Service, but there are supposed to be a lot of senior managers in the National Health Service itself who are probably being paid a lot of money. And they don't seem to be stepping up and saying, hey, we need to make some big changes here. Either that or just the politicians just aren't, John Swinney and Neil Gray just aren't listening to them.
Well, what's your experience, Craig?
I think it's obvious going with the stats that there's a problem, and anybody that can't see that needs to give their head a wobble. And I think what we do too often when we have a problem is we kind of just throw some money at it and cross our fingers and hope it'll go away. But when you see the ridiculous things that the government do, when we're the worst in Europe for drug deaths and we're worse than everybody else in the United Kingdom for alcohol deaths,
yes.
And the two solutions we have is we build a room in Glasgow you allow people to take Class A drugs. Why
Right,
get
yes.
anybody off drugs? And there's about 30 people a week using it, so it's not going to have any big hit. And what we do to combat the alcohol problem is minimum unit pricing, which
Yes.
has now been on the go for ages. And the results came out, I think it was last week or the week before, the new data came out, and the alcohol deaths have went up.
Yes.
So they're coming up with stupid solutions for some very, very serious problems. And they need to start talking to people that will tell them the truth, rather than going to quangos that they fund who will just tell them what they want.
That's it. Preach. That is exactly right. What they're doing, I mean, and it's such a waste of money as well. I was going to mention this earlier in the show when we were talking about the people not working. There's so many people actually that the government is paying to work in these quangos and so on. I read this week 300 million of the 1 million, 1 billion Scottish government budget, operating budget, is in these quangos, right? And what they exist to do is to basically to buy votes, and in many cases buying votes and buying policies for the SNP. And we just cut that all away. If you're a charity, you should be funded by charity, not by the government. The government isn't a charity. That's not right. Anyway, but that idea that they go and they go to these people who they've employed to say, well, what's going on in the drug situation, and then they come up with some nonsense.
We've seen it. A great story. There's the assisted dying. I've seen somebody put it in the comments. When that assisted dying bill was going through Parliament, the people that were funding adverts all over London, all over the tube, etc., were the people who were advising the government on what to do. Well, you've obviously you've already decided what you want. You want us to be able to do it. And I'm quite like, I could swing either way on that argument. I think, and if we do it, we need to really make it so tight, watertight, that it's safe. But you go, well, that's quangos advertising that are giving you. So they're advertising that this bill's good and let people die with dignity seem to be the slogan. And they were the same people that were advising the government.
Yeah, that's the way it works. It's exactly the same here.
On everything. There's so many. See the quangos and the charities, the government-funded quangos and charities. I wonder how much in total comes out of Holyrood for all of them.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. It's 300 million.
And do we need them all?
No, we don't need
them
all.
Of course, do we need any?
Don't need any of them. We don't need any of them at all. It's absolute nonsense, and they just wasting our money buying votes. That's it. It's benefits. It's a benefit program for the middle class.
Yeah,
that's really what it is. All right, so middle classes and Scots can feel good about themselves because they're doing something about the drugs. The drugs are terrible. We're going to do something.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Okay, right, good segment there, Mary. Get us all annoyed. But
it's just sad, isn't it? 56 people dead in a week.
It's sad that the people die. The problem is that it might be you next week, right?
Or one of our family.
Right.
Yeah.
Or anyone because there's no choice. You've got no choice. You have to go.
Just be unlucky.
To go there, right? And we said when a long time ago in the States, Sarah Palin, she was going, if they nationalise the health service, you have death panels, people deciding who's going to die and who's going to live. Well, that's exactly what it's like here. Basically, that's what it is. And she was shouted down because of it. And it's exactly what we have here. If you just get in the end of the queue, you end up in the corridor, and you might just die, and nobody cares at all. The system is broken. Right, things you can do to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. Look at this beautiful Majority T-shirt. Fantastic. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube or leave a like. Please like right now. You can tell your friends about us, or you can do all of the above, which makes us feel very happy and fulfilled, underlined exclamation mark. Coming up, it is the moment you have all been waiting for. It is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, okay, Zoomer of the Week it is indeed. All right, my Zoomer of the Week is Neil Hanvey. According to Wikipedia, Hanvey is a Scottish Nationalist politician who served as a leader of the Alba Party in the House of Commons from 2021 to 2024 and a Member of Parliament for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath from 2019 to 2024. He was booted out in the 2024 general election. Well, Wikipedia doesn't actually say that, but in those words, there's a slightly different. Actually, I should have
paraphrasing there.
Anyway, let's not do a picture of him. You can imagine what he's like. Anyway, now, some of you have seen this handy flowchart. that I made the other day. Here it is here, which basically is about there is no path for a minority of separatists in one part of the UK to break up the entire country. And I'm going to go through it all. But the point was, I made this because I'm tired of the ongoing bullshit, it says here, that nationalists keep coming out with. And also because I see so many people talking about secondary items like, oh, what about currency in independent Scotland? It's like, you're not going to get that far. Not even, why are we even talking about that? We're not talking about that because this is the basic point. The basic point here is no other country works this way. No other country says, if you've got some people in one part of the country, let's say they were in Cornwall or they were in Norfolk, and they all got up and said, no, we want to break away. No, that's not the way it works. Anyway, so now I would have preferred that David Cameron had said this to Alex Salmond at the time, but there was a referendum and we won, and that should put the matter to bed, of course. But nonetheless, this is the important point here. UK rules apply. Okay, so will a vote for separatist parties in Scottish elections result in a referendum? No, because the devolved Scottish Parliament cannot hold a referendum on UK constitution. Now, we also saw Nicola Sturgeon. She went to the Supreme Court, and that's what happened. They affirmed that. Then you usually get a bunch of things. The nationalists will say, you're denying us self-determination and democracy, and what about the Smith Commission, all this? It's like, no, none of that works, okay? But here's where we get back to Hanvey. I posted this chart under one of his posts, and he basically said, right, came back and he said, where is it? Oops, you forgot international law. And I was like, can you tell us exactly which international law can force the UK to break itself up? And he goes, the right of people to self-determination and blah, 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 blah. Okay, anyways, cut a long story short.
Please do.
Cut a long story short. Basically, he said that he came back down to this thing. The UN is going to save us. And I'm like, no, that's in the chart. The UN can't save you, and the UN has no power to do anything to save Scotland. The UN can't even sort out Ukraine or Israel or anything like that. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to sanction the UK government and send the white helmets to Gretna? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. The thing about this is their whole worldview is based on this idea that the UN is going to save them. The whole thing, when you get down to the bottom of their argument,
by saving them, you mean breaking up the UK?
Yeah, the UN somehow is going to force the UK to break itself up. It's just nonsense, utter nonsense. So anyway, for just continuing with these lies all the time that that UN can force the UK to break itself up, or that a minority of separatists in one part of the UK can do that, then we have to stop this and stop the people like Hanvey who continue to peddle these lies. Should be thrown out of Scottish politics, I say, and shunned. Perhaps shunned. Well, that's a good word.
You're not allowed to speak to him. No one's allowed to give him any service or any.
No, it's right. It's like you have to admit that the UN. I even went and did it in AI. Said, can the UN force the UK to break itself up? No.
So even artificial intelligence understands this, but not Neil Hanvey.
Well, and there's not much intelligence going on. Well, that's the question, though, is it? Is it deliberate? Do they know this and continue with it, or are they ignorant? Either way, it's not really a good thing, is it? You're either ignorant, or you're a fool, or you're a grifter. That's not right. Anyway, that's mine. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Right. Next up is going to be Craig.
Right. Well, my rumor of the week.
Hold on. No, you've got to do the thing
you have
first.
to wait.
Oh.
Right. There you go.
Right. Well, that was quite good because I just wanted to check. My room of the week is actually in the little title thing there. So, and it's John Swinney. And I'm actually letting myself down, and I'm letting Kev Buchan made a comment that Zoom of the week's got to be Humza every day, every week, every month, every year.
It often is.
And I think I've had Humza because he's my favourite politician the last twice I've been on the show. So I'm just going to mix it up a bit and go for Swinney. And the reason being, he went up to Stornoway this week on a trip, a wee jolly to show everybody up there how wonderful he is and how he loves them, and was talking absolute nonsense. And they put out a little post on Twitter, one of these memes, as it you call it, a little sort of graphic thing, saying that they were putting £5 million into the wind turbine industry, which will create all these jobs and investment into the area, etc., etc., etc. And none of that was true. They did give them £5 million, but the £5 million was for the local council to actually try and get the Scapa Deep. The name's just right in my head.
Water Key.
That's
Scapa Deep Water Key.
Water Key. That's a kiddie. So there's this thing that's going to cost us £200 million to build, and it's the Scapa Deep Water Key. And the Scapa Deep Water Key will allow the vessels to go in there and put these wind turbines together. Now, there's 2 wind turbines, one to the left and one to the right of Orkney, both owned by foreigners. So we're going to build this key, £200 million, to help them bring their stuff here to build it. None of it will be built in Scotland. And that the grant to get that money is actually with the British government just now, and it's on the reserve list. Okay. So they may or may not grant that, and that will then give this thing its total funding for the whole cost of building this quay. And what the £5 million was to allow the council scope to investigate fully all the stuff surrounding this quay before they then make their next decision to whether they grant the whole thing the go ahead or no, but they will do it. But the £5 million has got nothing to do with wind turbines. It's got nothing to do with attracting investment. It's got nothing to do with bringing jobs to the area. All these things that it claimed on their Twitter feed, little graphic, it's actually to go to the council so they can look more into researching the whole project. So it's total bollocks. And for that alone, he's got to be the Zoomer of the Week. He was up there, pressing palms, and pushing prams and doing all the sort of politician stuff, and must have decided, doing a Humza, well, just off the top of my head, we'll throw some money at the job. And the money actually was coming from the Highlands and Islands Enterprise Scheme, so it wasn't even directly from the government. It was actually money and funds from the HIE. So the whole thing's a total farce, total fallacy, and it says, look at me, I'm a good guy, I love Stornoway, here, catch some £12 million for the Orkneys.
Okay, see, it's for offshore wind turbines could be developed there. So they're going to have a manufacturing thing there. It seems unlikely.
Well, it's termed assembly. So, they'll bring it, the base in for somewhere, the big pole up for somewhere else. And
Germany.
The propeller bit will come for Germany and they'll put it all together there. So, and it's a 200 million, they've already put out the tenders for 200 million quid, and they've got a bid in with the UK government to get the 200 million quid. So, Catherine said Craig wins this week. Craig wins what? Am I the Zoomer of the week? I can't win.
No.
Well, saying that, there's one
you're winning the competition.
Aye, right. So I think there's one more person. I could be Zoomer of the week. Depends what Mary says next.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a strong contender.
Yeah, people are just people are voting for you.
Anyway, Mary's going to be up next. Right, Mary, can we stun us with what you've got?
Well, it's my old favourites. My Zoomers of the week are the Scottish Greens.
Oh, well, that's not surprising,
isn't it always? Yeah. Last year, they voted with the SNP-led council in Glasgow to cut teacher numbers by 450. That's about 10%. And for other brutal education cuts. But now they are out promising to stop the cuts, trying to position themselves as the big job saviours.
Right.
Now, the problem is that despite campaigning by unions, parents and students, teaching union EIS estimates that in the last year, they've already cut about 170 to 300 of these posts are already gone.
Right.
And EIS has already called a strike for February 20th, because that's the date when Glasgow City Council are going to be approving this year's budget. They're having the big budget meeting. And the EIS members voted 95% in favour of striking over these council cuts that were backed by the Greens. So basically, it makes me sick that the Greens are able to vote or influence basically any important issues in Scotland. They've proved time and again that they are incompetent hypocrites who are a scourge on Scotland. And that's why they are my Zoomers of the week.
Well, they are. I mean, it's like they just... What are they up to? Okay.
Well, they made this teacher strikes happen, right? Not the teacher strikes. They made the teacher cuts happen. And now they're saying, oh, we want to stop it. But it's already too late. Most of the jobs have already
if
been
they
cut.
stop the bike lanes, that's what we want them to stop. Stop the bike lanes.
They're just idiots.
Right, well, yes, and that should be repeated often. It should be. Anyway, Craig, you've got this job now. Is to choose the Zoomer of the Week. I shall tell you the three. There was Neil Hanvey for his ridiculous assertion that the UN will save Scotland, force the UK to break itself up. There was your own on John Swinney, blowing wind in Orkney. And then, of course, Mary there with the terrible, toxic Greens. Oh, but it was. Let us know.
So what do you think?
I thought we were getting a drum roll. I was waiting for one of the wee adverts again, sorry.
We can't afford drums here.
Right, okay, right. I need to put my cards on the table. I know Neil Hanvey. I've done podcasts with him. I speak to him regularly. And apart from one big, massive problem in his political bag of politics, I can't agree with. There's a lot of things I do. So I think if I was to vote for Neil, it could cause a relationship breakup. And,
right.
Quite like the guy. So that's an out. And again, I would
tell him to stop this nonsense about the United Nations.
Well, could you just have a word with him then?
I might be asking him to do a podcast about how the UN's going to make us independent. That might be interesting. And I think my own standards, I would forbid myself to vote for myself. But
you have to.
It doesn't mean that I think the Greens, for many reasons, are a worthy winner. Even if Neil Hanvey wasn't a Parliament or I hadn't come up with John Swinney, I think the Greens do deserve to win. And they're absolute crackpots. They just, I don't even know what they are anymore. They were meant to be these environmentalists, but now they're getting involved in, constitution questions, education, and all this nonsense. You think you're a party. The thing that really, really does my nut in about them, I think 2 out of 5, they've got 5 MSPs. Well, they've got 6 because one of them's just the speaker or whatever the controller's called in there. So out of the 5 they've got, one's a Canadian, and the other one's a Rhodesian/Zimbabwean. I think she was actually born in South Africa, so I'm not sure how she identifies, which is a key word for these guys as well.
Yeah,
she's African, right? And the other one's Canadian. So what's that? 40% of their people tell us what we have to do with Scotland.
It's frustrating.
I know.
It really is.
So well done, Mary.
I
think the Scottish Greens, regardless of all my reasons for getting there, they're worthy winners. Well
Thank
done.
you very much.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
All right. Okay. Right. We are so happy to have you with us on the show every week on Scotland's #1 Politics Chat. We'll see you same time same place. I can never get this line out. Same time, same place next Wednesday. The Thoughtful Week. I didn't write a Thoughtful Week, but something Mary says we've got to mention Valentine's Day.
Well, just wish people a happy Valentine's.
Roses are red, violets are blue. We hate nationalists, and so should you. How about that? That's not bad for ad-libbing. What they feel the poetry. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, we hope that you all do have a wonderful Valentine's Day with whomever you love. Anyway, we have loved Craig being on the show tonight with us. He's been very good company, and we're glad to have you on. Hopefully have you on again quite soon. Well, we may have to do that because it's been a little bit difficult to get David and Mark these past few weeks. Anyway, but you are always welcome, of course.
Yeah, always enjoy it. I think I've been your guest 3 or 4 times now. I've enjoyed each of them, so thank you very much.
You're welcome anytime.
Very welcome.
And the last time you did ask reach out and I had to say no, I do apologise. So
no, it's no problem at all. It's great to have you on anyway. So thank you, Craig, and good night. And thank you, Mary, as well, and thank you all out there for all of your comments.
Thank you and good night, everyone. Thank you for all the comments.
All right. See you
later.
Good night.
Bye now.
Take care.
Bye now.